started talking about what it means to be an image bearer of God. This is the first of a two-part class. Next week, we're going to talk about what does it mean to have healthy conflict as being an image bearer of Christ. And then remembering other people are too, which is hard. So our first one to start off with a couple of questions. The first question is, when I say the word image, what are we thinking of? So what do you think of when I say the word image?
Picture.
Visual.
Okay, yeah, picture, visual. Other words?
A mirror.
Pardon?
A mirror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not looking for anything specific, so you guys can keep going if you have any other words, thoughts. Okay. Well, you guys are all getting at, like, basically an image is like you were saying, it's like a picture, a mirror, representation. It's a visualization of something else. So the passage that we're really going to be focusing on today is Genesis 1:26 through chapter 2, verse 1. And in that, we kind of get the basis of why we use in the Christian circles the image of God, that terminology. And the really interesting thing is that the phrase image of God in Hebrew that's used here is the word son, and that is translated elsewhere as idol. And so it's interesting to think that idols, which were these things that were meant to represent a divine being, is what God uses here to call his special creation. Now, before we get too much further, can someone go ahead and read that passage for me?
I've got it.
That's right.
Okay, wait, 26 through...
Chapter 2, verse 1. Yeah,
Okay. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree of seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, I have given every green plant of food. And it was so. And God saw everything that was made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them.
Awesome. Thank you, Lucy. So I really wish we had a lot of time to just go over how much this really represents God's original design for us as his image bearers on earth. Because in here we can see motifs of having dominion, creating, of just really showing God's character into the world that he had created and stuff like that. So what we're going to land on for now, and for really most of this lesson, is verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. And clearly we can see through this how God is really making sure that it is him himself that he is creating in us, and he wants to be replicated in the world. And now I understand the first thing that might come to our minds is like, well, this was back before chapter 3 and everything goes to pieces. But even if you look in chapter 3 at the specific verses, God is not taking away that, okay, don't be my image bearer anymore because you messed it up. It's rather, no, God is saying, hey, you're still meant to be my image bearer, you're still meant to live this out. But now we have this decision of sin that is going to taint that and make it difficult and distort it. So just because we live lives of sin, that doesn't mean we aren't still called to be God's image bearers. It just means it's really hard, and without Jesus, ultimately it's impossible to reflect the image of God out into the world among us. I love that Julie mentioned a mirror, because the mirror is an analogy I feel like works really well for this. You know, even if you break a mirror, it's still going to reflect an image. The image is just going to be distorted now. And so it's not going to be as clear and perfect as it was meant to be, like we were. So, kind of with that in mind, that, you know, an image is meant to reflect something, that we were meant to reflect the character of God into the world, but we now have this challenge of sin. What comes to your guys' mind when it comes to reflecting God in real life? What does it mean to be an image bearer of God in real life?
To show God to others, maybe by the way we live.
When you are, I don't want to say active, living out a character trait of God, so like maybe forgiveness, when you show forgiveness, kindness, any of the just character traits of God. There.
Yeah.
Using our gifts to be creative, like how he is the ultimate creator. We are kind of like sub-classes of that.
A couple of other examples. All these are great so far.
You're responsible for how people understand God.
Yeah, so how we live our lives kind of frames how other people might see it and understand God. Yeah. One more answer.
Be the good soil. To be the good soil.
Yes. Yeah. Be a good soil to live in our own lives, but also be kind of pushing that in other people's lives too, like we're always saying, being positive representations. So you guys are getting at a lot of really good things. And really kind of what you guys are getting at is you guys are looking at the character of God and then taking that and being like, okay, but how does that live in my life with my unique makeup, my unique situations, my unique life story? What does that mean to be the character of God to other people? And really, guys, that's what we're talking about when we use phrases like becoming more like Jesus. We're looking at this person who came and embodied the character of God on earth, and like, I know Jesus was perfect. We're never going to live up to that. But Jesus was tempted. Jesus had to deal with the effects of sin in this world. And Jesus still, he gives us a lot of practical things as well as just daily good practices for building a relationship with the Father about how to interact with fellow image bearers of God in this world. So kind of my last question, and I promise it's not a trick question, but is the character of God, is it complex or is it simple?
Both.
Okay, explain it.
It's complex because we can never fully wrap our minds around it. We can never fully understand more here on earth, but it's also simple because it's simple enough for us to understand what we need to know.
Yeah, I like that. Anyone else want to weigh in?
Simple. God is love.
Okay.
But love is complex.
Yeah. Do you want to explain it? Or is that what we have so far?
That's just what I have.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay.
The fruits of the Spirit are all part of God's character,
Mm-hmm.
and each of those fruits have like their own meanings to it as well.
Okay.
So like you said love, but then there's also joy, and then there's peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, and all of them are like simple, like when they're laid out like that, but they're more complex when you go deeper into the meanings of how they work with God and how they're fulfilled through us.
I think it's so simple that in our human brain we have to make it complex.
I think he's supposed to be simply, like, he's trying to simplify himself so that we can get closer to him and understand him for who he is. But it's like this world that tries to like make us overthink and makes it complex and difficult for us to understand.
I like that because it's the world that makes it harder. That's where the temptation is, and that's where.
You want to keep going? Good thoughts. Anyone else? These are all great thoughts. I was not expecting this one session. So,
Simple question.
huh?
So it's a simple question.
Complex discussion.
It's a
round and round and round and round in circles. So I liked that people pointed out that it was simple because I didn't get there. And I think I should have thought through that a little bit more, because what I came to is I tend to view the character as God as more complex in the sense there are aspects of God that are very simple. You know, truths like God is love, God is joy, God is peace, God is patience. But how that may play out in the life of someone else, or even in the life of different situations or scenarios, it can be complex. You know, you think of the scenario, God is just, and then you think of these situations in the world. Well, what does it mean for justice to actually happen and stuff like that? So the best thing I can come up with is, again, it's kind of like a broken mirror. And I chose this picture because I thought it was pretty and not creepy like most of them. But if you go back to the mirror illustration, think about it. I like art a lot, so we thought of this and kind of like, there's an artist, they want to create this amazing art installation out of broken mirrors. And so they gather several different types of mirrors, maybe a couple hand mirrors, a couple long mirrors, couple like little compact mirrors, and they set them all up in the elements and they point them at the same thing. So say the sun or whatever. But because they're in the elements, you know, storms happen, they get broken and stuff like that. Things that the artist allows, but the artist isn't causing any of this. And the image, it ends up getting distorted. And now the artist might come along and try to like buff a mirror or fix it a little bit so it reflects the image a little clearer. But at the end of the day, without entirely replacing the mirrors are always going to be distorted. And they're not going to reflect the image that the same as all the other mirrors, but also not perfectly. And kind of if you think about it with us, you know, we're the mirrors. God sets us all up differently. We all have different wirings, different giftings, different stories, different things like that. And we're all placed in this world, and things happen in life, you know, things God doesn't cause, but things that God allows for one reason or another. And then all of us, you know, have the same picture we're supposed to be reflecting, which is Jesus Christ. But because we're made differently, because we're broken differently, how we reflect Jesus in our lives and out into the world is going to look different from everybody. And you know, Jesus, he does come along through the work of the Holy Spirit to kind of, you know, buff that mirror and make it reflect the image of Jesus a little bit clearer in our lives. But at the end of the day, until we get to heaven, we're not going to be reflecting that image perfectly. So what we're really getting at here is to just reflect it as close to Jesus as we can get on this earth. Now, most of us, we kind of start walking around life just pretty unaware of what our cracks are or how they're affecting us. And God can definitely still use us without being aware of why we might be wired this way and how we can be most using that wiring to love, become more like Christ and love others better. And I wanted to spend a lot of time on spiritual gifts, but Ryan talked about that so well at the retreat. I'm like, I don't need to beat that dead horse. Like, it is good. So we're actually going to talk about a different personality type tool that we can use. But before we do that, I want to get into two caveats real quick. And these caveats come from just my personal walk with Christ. When you're in your early 20s, everything's about discovering yourself. And so it's all over all the personality tools, and I still like them a lot. But two of the things I had to learn comes from this. The first is that personality tools are meant to be descriptive, not prescriptive. So descriptive means to describe something, and prescriptive means to impose something. So personality tools, assessments, quizzes, things like that, they're meant to just be fun and give language to already existing conditions. They're not meant to be kind of like, oh, well, if you are, you know, an INFJ, you're always supposed to react like this, or this, because for one, that doesn't take in the complexity of other parts. You know, personality assessments tend to focus on just one aspect of your being, whether that's spiritual or cognitive or behavioral or interpersonal, things like that. So at the end of the day, whenever we take something with personality, we want to be remembering that it's just meant to describe things that are already there, give language to your experience, which is sometimes the hardest thing for us to do, is to describe what we're experiencing in a way that's helpful to connect with other people. and also helpful for us to know how we should be growing in Christ. If I recognize in myself a habit of always doing something the same way, and then I see a personality assessment that kind of helps click and puts that experience into language, then I can know, okay, I can react more like Christ in this way instead of what I typically do. But the other thing, and this is the biggest thing I want you guys to walk away with, your identity should never be anything other than Jesus Christ and what He's done for you. And it's super easy to get caught up in being like, I'm an INFJ, or I'm a 2, or whatever, whatever personality assessment you like. But at the end of the day, you want to be going back to God's Word and being remember what God calls you. God calls you loved, God calls you forgiven, God calls you redeemed, He calls you free. And you could spend your whole life looking over this and not even scratch the surface of what God calls you and what He has for you. And so, at the end of the day, really what we're needing to be doing whenever we talk about anything related to personality is just coming back to God's Word and being like, but God, what do you say I am? Who do you say I am? And asking Him about things like this. We want to be always focusing at the end of the day on truth of God's Word and what He says and who He says you are. Because Satan, he's going to throw lies and lies at you, and you don't want to ever be captive to that. So with those things in mind, we're going to talk about a personality assessment tool that I find really helpful, just based on its structuring and the language it uses to describe it. So the one we're talking about today is the NERIS Type Explorer. It's a personality assessment that takes the language of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, the MBTI, and it pairs it with kind of a tweaked framework of the Big 5 personality traits. And the Big 5 just covers, it's kind of a ranking of personality traits that might be found in people. And when it pairs that, it really is measuring the percentage a trait might show up in a person in 5 different categories of mind, energy, nature, tactics, and identity. Now this section is going to be really information heavy, so because of that, this this top handout is going to explain all of these categories as well as the different breakdowns, so that it's something we can refer to later when we are going through and researching. Some of you are the lucky recipients of me messing up, and so you have it double-sided instead of single-sided. I'm sorry. But basically, the mind is in this top corner here, and that just talks about how we interact with our world. We can fall into one of 2 categories according to this theory of personality, and that's introversion or extroversion. Introverts basically tend to draw their energy from inward, while extroverts tend to draw their energy from outward. You can see here a couple of other things about introverts that and extroverts that are just typical characteristics of both. The second thing that the NERIS measures is energy, which is just basically how you process the information that you're taking in from your world around you. So this is where, if you ever saw Myers-Briggs, the N and the S, it stands for intuitive and observant. People who are intuitive are more imaginative. Their thinking is not quite as just lateral and line to line to line, versus people who are observant. They can be very creative, but they tend to be more creative in practical ways. And their thinking is maybe a little bit more linear than intuitive friends. The other thing the NERIS measures is nature. So that one discusses why you make the decisions you do and how you relate to the emotions you have. So persons who tend to be more thinking, they tend to be more objective. I like to think of my sister Lydia. She's really good at just thinking, experiencing emotion, but then putting that away and thinking logically through her emotion. Versus me, I definitely tend to fall more on the feeling end. And so just a little bit more sensitive and emotionally expressive. And so I tend to experience an emotion in fullness. And then afterwards I was like, oh yeah, we should actually talk about why we experienced that and why we experienced that the way we did. So there's room for both in God's world, obviously. The other thing that we talk about is tactics, which is judging and perceiving. Tactics just describes how you approach your work, how you approach planning, and how you approach decision making. Judging people tend to be more decisive, more organized, and people who are more perspective, or I learned it as perceiving, so either or works here. They tend to improvise, be more flexible, kind of more go with the flow type people. And then the last thing that, if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, that the NERIS adds on is this aspect of identity, which is the extra letter of the minus T or the minus A. And the identity is basically just your confidence in your decision-making abilities. And assertive personalities, they don't tend to stress as easy. They have a lot more confidence in their decision-making abilities, but turbulent personalities might stress a little bit easier and be less confident of their decision-making abilities. But as we're going to look back a little bit lower in strategies, that's not always a bad thing to be a little bit more kind of introspective about your abilities and stuff like that. So kind of to explain, in a minute we're going to give you guys time to take the NERIS type indicator to kind of see, okay, where might I be falling in their spectrum that they have here. But I want to take a little bit of time real quick, explain why they parse out things that they do. So first, they're going to parse everything you take into a role. And so a role is basically just goals, interests, perceived activities that might be enjoyable. And so I didn't have enough space to really put an in-depth kind of description of what each of the roles are, but if you go to 16personalities.com and really look at the theory, it'll go more into depth as to what those roles are and what they cover. But essentially people, they tend to be more intuitive or thinking, they tend to be intuitive or feeling, observant and judging, or observant and prospecting. And then after, within each role has 4 different strategies that they might employ. And so that's for how you prefer to do things and how you achieve your goals. And so if you look here up on the screen, we have our 4 roles outlined there. We have analysts, diplomats, centennials, and explorers. And then each of those are further divided into strategies. So you guys kind of seeing how you'll have these composites of measurable traits and characteristics. You'll be put into kind of a role category, and then they'll further divide into strategies that you will use, and then even further from there, whether you tend to be a more turbulent personality or a more assertive personality. And so kind of like you can see here, when you're grouped in your thing, you're given kind of like a cutesy little name. So if you looked up there, I tend to fall on INFJT, so with the turbulent at the end. And so I would fall under the category of the advocate, which is in the diplomats over there, so you can't see it very well in that photo. But that's where I would tend to fall. And on the website, these are clickable links, so you can just click on it and it'll take it more to your description there. So for your guys' discussion time with your mentor, I really want to give you guys a head start on taking this assessment. And it's really easy to use on your phone. It should take you only about 10 minutes. But go ahead, take a head start on this assessment. And then I want you guys to take your discussion sheet with your mentor and start going through that. I want you to start talking about, one second, I can do that, thank you. I want you to talk through those questions, and then I want you to begin looking in your Bible for truth about what you said. Because truly, guys, we don't want to walk away and you're like, oh, I learned in class today. It was like, I'm an INFJ. But no, I want you to learn I'm an image bearer of God. I have broken wiring, and that broken wiring manifests in this type indicator or whatever. But here's what God says about me, and here's in the Bible a framework of someone I can follow, ways I could become more like Jesus, and really Jesus is who I'm basing this personality on. So James, what was your question?
Just go to the psychology.
Okay.
could have changed.
You're good, you just start looking at your Bible. Yeah, if you have taken, so if you've taken this assessment specifically, they save your results. So you don't necessarily need to do it again. If you didn't read your tag, take time to read it. But if you haven't taken this assessment specifically, even if you've taken Myers-Briggs, I'd encourage you to take this one. I took Myers-Briggs in college and took this several years post-college, and I saw that some of my results had changed as I had grown. And so it can be helpful if you haven't taken it in a while, or if you haven't taken this assessment specifically, because it does the tier of Myers-Briggs, that it can be helpful. So go ahead and take this one. So.